but all that blurred around her. She wasn't there to blend in. She was there to break through. The Sky Tower Gala wasn't just another social evening. It was the presentation that could change everything. Wayne Tech's eco-luxury skyscraper bid was the largest commercial interior design contract in the state, possibly the country. Landing it would secure her firm's legacy. She already had the stats, the portfolio, the vision. Hello, my amazing family. This is Dr. Phillips. Welcome to the place where love meets twilight, where every story glows with romance, mystery, and a touch of magic. If you've just joined, you're not just a follower. You're part of a journey that never fades with the sunset. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel, Love in Twilight. Now let's dive right in. What she didn't expect was him. She hadn't seen Roger Wayne in 3 years, but she remembered his voice like it was yesterday. She'd been attending a networking mixer in Manhattan, wearing her first ever silk pantsuit, all nerves and ambition, when she overheard him. She hadn't been eavesdropping. She'd simply walked by an open lounge door and paused when she heard the name of someone she admired. And then, no offense, I just don't date black women. Not my thing. I like what I like. Casual. Effortless. Like discussing menu options at a golf club. She hadn't flinched then. Not outwardly. But something inside her clenched, a quiet punch to the chest. Not because she needed his approval, but because of what it represented. Men like him, powerful, polished, broadcast into the world as the faces of progress, still saw women like her as boxes not to be checked. And now, she smirked. Now she was on tonight's finalist list, the one everyone whispered about, the one whose work had captured imaginations from coast to coast. What she didn't know until an hour ago was that he would be here too. Wayne Tech had just been revealed as the major investor backing the entire skyscraper project, and Roger Wayne was seated 3 rows from the front. Kersey turned slightly, the diamonds in her earrings catching the chandelier light. She didn't need to rehearse her pitch anymore. She lived and breathed it. Every tile, every reclaimed beam, every clean energy layout. It wasn't just design. It was her. She stepped out of the powder room and into the ballroom. Gold chandeliers sparkled against high arching ceilings. Velvet drapes framed 40-foot windows, and white-suited servers glided through the crowd. She moved past them all with the grace of a woman on a mission. Her heels clicked against the glass platform stage. She didn't look at the crowd. Not yet. She looked only at the screen behind her as her first slide came up. A hush fell. And then she spoke. Luxury is not about excess. It's about purpose. And design should not only serve beauty, it should serve humanity. Heads turned. Pens paused. Even the man in the 3rd row, yes, him, leaned forward. As she continued, confidence coated every word. Her voice didn't shake. Her hands didn't falter. She spoke of material innovation, of recycled glass tiles inspired by river, pebbles, of heating systems that adjusted based on occupancy and sunlight. Her designs weren't just smart, they were soulful. When she finished, there was a beat of silence. And then the applause rolled in, some polite, some impressed. But Roger Wayne, he was staring. Kersey stepped off the stage, calm and composed. As she passed by him, she didn't stop, but he did. "Miss Kersey?" he called, voice deeper than she remembered. She turned. Her smile was sharp. "Yes, Mr. Wayne?" His brow furrowed. "We've met before?" She held his gaze. "You probably wouldn't remember. I was invisible then." He blinked, confusion flickering across his chiseled face. And she turned, perfume trailing behind her like a challenge. Later that evening, back in his suite at the Gala Hotel, Roger stared at the name on the presenter sheet. Kersey Noel. He typed it into his private intranet, unlocking access to her full proposal portfolio. It loaded slowly, his internet lagging, but his pulse quickening. And when he started reading, he didn't stop until sunrise. Roger Wayne had watched hundreds of pitches in his life, but this one wouldn't leave him alone. He sat there long after the applause faded, staring at the screen even as the next presentation began. The crisp voice of the next designer barely registered. His mind was still replaying hers, every word, every slide, every confident stride across that stage. There was something about her, not just her beauty, though she had it in abundance, but her presence. The way she spoke, as if she didn't need the room to approve her. As if she already knew she belonged. She didn't flinch when the chairman grilled her about material sourcing. She didn't soften when the COO questioned the budget distribution. And when the lead investor asked if her firm could handle a project of this scale, her response was pure steel. Wayne Tech doesn't invest in what's safe. You invest in what's next. That's me. Roger hadn't remembered her right away. Not in the powder room hallway. Not even when she addressed the room. But something about her voice, it gnawed at him. Like a note from a forgotten song. And then her words hit. You probably wouldn't remember. I was invisible then. He froze. Invisible? He didn't say anything at the time, but the moment she walked away, it started coming back. That investor event in Manhattan. That lounge. That sentence. The one he'd said like it meant nothing. And yet it had stayed with her. Now, it stayed with him. Backstage, Kersey leaned against the wall, sipping from a glass of water someone handed her. Her hands had started to shake only now that it was over, but not from fear, from adrenaline. The look on Roger Wayne's face, that was the real prize. He didn't recognize her at first, which was expected. Men like him didn't remember shadows. But now, he wouldn't forget her again. One of the assistants tapped her arm. Miss Noel? The investors want to speak with you privately. Upstairs. The executive suite. She nodded. On my way. As she climbed the wide staircase lined with velvet rope, she caught glimpses of hushed murmurs and tilted glances. People were whispering her name, whispering about her. She didn't mind. Let them talk. In the private suite, the energy was more formal, but no less tense. A long table, a few bottles of wine, project executives, the financial backers, and Roger. He stood near the window, facing the skyline with his hands tucked in his trouser pockets. The moonlight spilled over his profile, and for the first time in years she looked at him without emotion. Not hate, not admiration, just observation. He turned slowly. Their eyes locked. And for one aching second, the room didn't exist. Miss Noel, said the chairman. That was one hell of a presentation. She smiled. Thank you. Another executive added, we've reviewed dozens of portfolios this quarter. Yours had the strongest creative integrity. Roger's voice cut in. She was the only one who told us the truth. The room went still. Even the chairman blinked. Roger took a step forward, folding his arms across his chest. Everyone else pitched what they thought we wanted to hear. She pitched what she believed we needed. Kersey held her breath, not out of flattery, out of shock. Was this the same man? Unanimous? The chairman asked the table. A series of nods. Then it settled. He reached across the table and extended his hand. Miss Noel, you've won the Wayne Tech design contract. Later that night, the suite emptied, but Roger lingered. Kersey stood at the edge of the table, carefully packing her documents back into her leather portfolio. She didn't acknowledge him, not at first, until he finally spoke. You deserved that win, he said quietly. I know, she replied, snapping the clasp shut. I meant what I said. You didn't just present a design, you presented vision. She turned, gaze steady. And yet 3 years ago, you didn't think people like me could embody vision. Roger's throat tightened. I was wrong. That's convenient now, she said, voice calm but clipped. He didn't argue. He didn't excuse himself. He just nodded. Maybe. But it's still true. She looked at him for a long moment, then turned to leave. He didn't try to stop her. But as the door clicked shut behind her, Roger felt something foreign settling in his chest. Regret, the kind that didn't go away with time. Alone in his penthouse suite hours later, Roger opened Kersey's design portfolio again. Page after page of brilliance. It wasn't just how she used materials. It was why she used them. Every detail had meaning. Every decision had impact. Her mind was a landscape of vision and discipline. She was undeniable. He closed the laptop and stared at the ceiling. The woman he once dismissed had become the woman who now haunted his every thought. And he didn't even know her middle name. The next morning brought emails, lots of them. Kersey sat in her downtown studio office, sunlight washing across her. Desk, her assistant Ava beside her reading out the flood of responses. 7 new project requests, 3 interviews, 2 speaking engagements, 1 offer to do a TED-style talk at UCLA's architecture department. Kersey didn't blink. She simply sipped her espresso. Anything from Wayne Tech? She asked casually. though her fingers paused above her keyboard. Ava checked the list. Yes. One calendar request. Weekly site meetings begin next week, Monday at 9. Site location, Sky Tower, 40th floor, West Wing Conference Room. Assigned liaison, Roger Wayne. Kersey's brows lifted ever so slightly. He's the liaison? Apparently, Ava replied. Should I respond? Kersey took another sip of her coffee. No, let him wait. That Monday, she arrived 5 minutes early. The construction site hummed with soft drills and distant hammering. Concrete dust lingered in the air, but the glass elevators and freshly installed Art Deco lobby suggested something magnificent was on its way. She entered the 40th floor conference room with her tablet in hand. Already seated at the end of the long table, wearing another midnight black suit, was Roger Wayne. He stood immediately. Miss Noel. She gave a polite nod. Mr. Wayne. For a moment, neither moved. Then she walked to the opposite end of the table and sat down, placing her device on the glass surface with precision. Roger cleared his throat. I hope the project timeline meets your expectations. It does, she said, though some changes will need to be made. I prefer creative over corporate pacing. He smirked lightly. I'll keep that in mind. She glanced up. You'll need to do more than keep it in mind. You'll need to trust it. He sat down, folding his hands. Understood. They reviewed blueprints, discussed structural timelines, material drop schedules, elevation modifications. She kept it professional, cool, assertive, but every now and then, their hands would graze while sliding documents across the table. And every time it happened, they both paused. It wasn't romance, not yet. But something unspoken was beginning to form. By week 3, the meetings no longer started exactly on time because they were too busy arguing. Not petty debates, passionate battles over design philosophies. Kersey wanted natural bamboo for the rooftop lounge floors. Roger argued for luxury-engineered wood panels. I get the eco-vision, he said, but we can't sacrifice elegance. Elegance doesn't require exploitation, she fired back. And you said you hired me for my vision. He leaned forward, brows narrowing slightly. I did. But I'm still the client. Her eyes locked with his. And I'm not a decorator. I'm the visionary. Silence. And then, he laughed, low and genuine. I've never met anyone who talks to me like that. Maybe that's the problem, she said, standing to gather her papers. Too many people bow, not enough stand. She didn't wait for a reply. Later that evening, Roger stood in the project's model gallery, alone. He stared at the 3D render of the 40th floor Sky Lounge, thinking about her bamboo floors. How she spoke about environmental responsibility, like it was sacred. How her eyes lit up when she talked about what mattered, not just what looked good. He wasn't used to this, to being challenged, to being seen. She didn't defer to him, and strangely, that made him crave her more, not just physically, but intellectually. The next meeting, he brought coffee. Black, no sugar, just how she liked it. He slid it across the table before saying a word. Kersey raised an eyebrow. What's this? You once told Ava you only function with caffeine before 10. I figured I'd try not being the problem today. She stared at the cup, then at him, and for the first time since that gala night, she smiled. A real one, small, but unmistakable. Later that day, they reviewed the lighting schematic. Her fingers brushed his again. Longer this time. He didn't pull back. Neither did she. Their eyes met, and that unspoken thing between them, it sparked, not loud, not blazing, but real. Something was changing, and for the first time in his life, Roger didn't want to stop it. The contract landed on her desk like a challenge wrapped in gold. Kersey scanned the cover page, Wayne Tech Skyline Project, final execution copy. Her firm's name was printed in bold beneath it. She exhaled slowly. This wasn't just another contract. It was the largest design project of her career. She leaned back in her leather chair, tapping her pen against the edge of her desk. Her team stood outside her glass office, pretending not to stare, pretending not to celebrate too soon. She signed it. With a black Mont Blanc ink pen Roger had gifted her for luck a week earlier. And when she slid the document back into the envelope, she allowed herself a moment to smile. Not for Wayne Tech, not for the world, but for herself. The next morning, Headlines appeared. Woman-led firm secures state's biggest interior design contract. Kirstie Noel outdesigns legacy firms in major Waynetech bid. She didn't bother reading the full articles. She had floors to design and deadlines to meet. But the buzz was loud, too loud to ignore. By the end of the day, 3 rival firms had publicly questioned the selection process. One claimed favoritism, another implied bias for diversity optics, and a third flat-out accused Waynetech of discarding veteran partnerships. Kirstie didn't respond, but Roger did. That night, a press statement hit every business outlet. We selected Kirstie Noel's firm not because of optics, but because of outcome. Her designs are the future, and we don't negotiate with the past. Roger Wayne, CEO Kirstie, read it twice, then once more, slower. He didn't have to say it, but he did. And that, whether she admitted it or not, meant something. A few days later, she met Roger in the private elevator to the Sky Tower construction site. Just the two of them. No words at first, only the hum of the elevator rising floor after floor. Then, quietly, she asked, "You didn't owe me that press defense." He turned, looking directly at her. "I didn't do it for you." "Oh, I did it for the truth," he said. "And maybe for the version of me that needed to say it out loud." The elevator doors opened. She stepped out without another word. But her expression? A hint of acknowledgement. The project consumed them. Site visits, team reviews, material checks, budget revisions. Each day blurred into the next, but the tension between them never dulled. Sometimes it was subtle. A glance held a second too long. Other times, it was sharp, verbal battles over stone textures or lighting geometry that made the interns hold their breath. Kirstie worked like she had something to prove. Roger watched like he wanted to understand the fire that fueled her. And though nothing had been said outright, everyone on site knew something was building. On a Thursday evening, they reviewed final renderings in the glass-walled mezzanine overlooking the open lobby. Her laptop was open between them, the latest 3D layout glowing on screen. He leaned in. "That archway, you widened it?" She nodded. "Guests need to feel welcomed before they're impressed. You design like an empath." "I design like someone who's been shut out of too many rooms." Roger didn't respond, because that line, it pierced, not just because of what it revealed about her, but because it held a mirror to who he had once been. The wind howled through the open beams above them. Kirstie reached for a sample board, and her hand brushed against his. Again, only this time, she didn't pull back. Neither did he. They just stood there, connected at the fingertips, while the world outside rattled with construction noise. And for once, neither had anything to say. The next morning, Roger showed up with 2 hard hats and a surprise visit to the rooftop space. "No press, no investors," he said. "Just you, me, and the sky." She followed, half curious, half skeptical. At the top, the sun was just starting to dip, throwing soft orange light across. The steel skeleton of what would soon be the city's most coveted penthouse suite. "This view," she whispered, walking slowly to the edge. "You'll be designing it," he said quietly behind her. "I thought it deserved a moment." She turned. "You're not what I expected." "Neither are you," he replied. Then added, "Thank God." By the 5th week, the 40th floor conference room had become a battlefield, not a hostile one, but charged. Kirstie arrived each morning in neutral-toned power suits and heels that echoed through the marble corridor. Roger was always already there, nursing his second espresso, sleeves rolled up, collar slightly loosened. They didn't make small talk anymore. They challenged each other. Every decision sparked a conversation, and every conversation sparked something else. Today was no different. Kirstie stood by the panoramic window, her tablet in hand, presenting a revised layout for the West Atrium lobby. Roger circled the table, arms crossed, gaze intense. "You want to replace the custom brass fixtures with hand-cut matte bronze?" he asked. "Yes," she replied flatly. "Brass reflects heat, bronze absorbs it. Also, it's softer, more grounded." He raised an eyebrow. "Grounded doesn't sell penthouse units." She met his stare. "Luxury isn't just for the eyes, it's for the soul. When people walk into that lobby, I want them to feel safe, warm, not intimidated." Roger's jaw tensed, then relaxed. "You really believe design can do that?" "I don't believe it," she said, stepping closer. "I know it." Silence, not awkward, just thick. They were close now, closer than they'd ever stood in this room. He could smell the faint jasmine on her skin again. She could feel the warmth radiating from his body, even with space between them. But neither moved. Until Ava knocked on the glass door. "Sorry, construction lead on the phone. Needs urgent approval." Kersey stepped back. Roger blinked, breaking the moment. She nodded once and turned, walking out without another word. That afternoon, the team broke early. Kersey stayed behind, redlining elevation diagrams. Roger lingered too. He walked over, a blueprint tube in hand. "Got 5 minutes?" She glanced up. "Depends. Are you asking or commanding?" He smiled. "Just asking." She set the pen down. "Then you have 4. He unrolled a sheet between them. This is your revised layout for the rooftop garden, right?" She nodded. He pointed. "This curved bench design. It's elegant, but it only seats 6. Intentionally," she replied. "It's meant to encourage stillness, small conversations, reflection. Most clients want space for events. I don't design for noise. I design for connection." He studied her. "You don't compromise easily." "No," she said. "Do you?" "Not often," he admitted. "But lately, I've been reconsidering what I thought was non-negotiable." He said it slowly, deliberately. Their eyes locked. That now familiar current passed between them again, like gravity rearranging itself around one shared space. The tension wasn't spoken about, but it hung in every unfinished corridor, every late-night edit, every silence that said more than words ever could. Kersey wasn't used to this kind of distraction. Roger wasn't used to wanting someone for more than a moment. And yet, here they were, drawn. A week later, during a site walkthrough, the floor shook slightly from machinery overhead. Kersey instinctively stumbled back. Roger caught her by the arm. Firm, protective, their bodies aligned in one sharp breath. They stared. Neither let go. Not immediately, and when he finally did, his fingertips lingered just 1 second too long. Later that evening, she returned to her office, flustered. She threw her bag on the couch and stood by the window, watching headlights blur across the city. A part of her wanted to shut the door on it. Whatever this was, but another part, the part that remembered how he used to speak, the part that still held the echo of his old words, wanted to see how far he'd come, not just to test him, but to see if change was possible. For a man like him, for a story like theirs. Meanwhile, Roger sat in his car outside the building, engine off, city humming around him. He stared at the dashboard, hands gripping the wheel. There were things he wanted to say, things he was afraid would come out all wrong. He wasn't the same man from 3 years ago, but he didn't know if she'd ever believe it. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime. Kersey stepped inside, arms filled with material samples, swatches of fabric, stone tiles, lighting textures. She pressed the button for the 40th floor, exhaling as the doors slid shut. The ride had become routine, but today, the tension in her chest wasn't about design. It was about him, Roger Wayne, the man who once said women like her weren't his type, now stared at her like she was the only truth he'd ever known. She leaned against the elevator wall, pulse betraying her calm. She was used to working under pressure, but this was pressure of a different kind. This was emotional tension wrapped in attraction. On the 40th floor, he waited, suit crisp, tie loose, a faint shadow of fatigue under his eyes, like he hadn't been sleeping well. He hadn't. He didn't say anything when she walked in, just watched her glide across the room, her heels tapping lightly against the polished floor. "Good morning," she said. His response was slower. "It is now." She looked at him. The words hung in the air, not playful, not teasing, just honest. He cleared his throat and turned to the table. The engineers finalized the structural analysis for the Sky Lounge terrace. They've greenlit the weight distribution. You'll get your infinity edge pool. She moved beside him, scanning the layout. "I told you it would work." "I never doubted you," he replied. She tilted her head. "That's new." He smiled faintly. "Maybe I'm learning." They worked through sketches and blueprints, but something had shifted. When he passed her the site notes, his fingers brushed hers again. She didn't flinch. When she reached for the same pen, their hands collided. Neither moved. And when she leaned over the table to mark up the lighting design, he didn't look at the papers. He looked at her. at the curve of her jaw, the way her lashes fluttered when she concentrated, the way she bit the inside of her cheek when debating panel texture. She was captivating, not just physically, but in every inch of who she was. And for a man who once reduced women to preferences and appearances, this woman had shattered every shallow filter he used to live behind. "Roger," she said softly, not looking up. He blinked. "Yeah?" "Stop staring." His voice lowered. "Can't help it." She turned, finally meeting his gaze. And that moment, that charged silence, spoke louder than any flirtation. It was acknowledgement. Mutual. Inevitable. He wasn't hiding his interest anymore. And she wasn't denying hers. Later, during a site walkthrough, the construction lead asked them to review a new HVAC shaft being framed near the east wing. The space was tight, narrow scaffolding, concrete dust, plastic drapes flapping from portable fans. Kersey stepped carefully over a pile of coiled wires. Roger held her elbow without asking. She didn't shake him off. When they paused at the shaft's edge, she leaned slightly forward to inspect the duct vents. Roger was directly behind her, one hand still gently resting on her lower back. Too close, too aware. She turned slowly, their faces inches apart. "If I fall," she said quietly, "I'll take you with me." "I'll catch you before you do," he replied. No smile, no sarcasm, just truth. They didn't kiss. Not yet. But that look burned. It promised everything without a single touch. The next morning, Kersey arrived early. Before the crew, before Roger. She walked the unfinished hallway alone, tracing her fingers along the exposed brick. There was something about silence in a space in progress that made her feel alive. It reminded her that growth was messy, loud, beautiful in its imperfection. Behind her, soft footsteps. She turned. Roger. He didn't speak, just watched her. And then, without breaking the moment, he said, "Do you believe in second chances?" She studied him. "I believe people change when they want it badly enough." His jaw clenched. "I want it." She looked down, then back up, then earn it. The sky outside was moody, thick clouds hanging low as if the weather too sensed something was about to break. Kersey followed Roger up the unfinished stairwell to the top floor of Sky Tower, the wind whistling faintly through steel beams and exposed glass. The building was raw up here, no furniture, no walls yet, just possibility and tension. She stopped near a stretch of floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the entire skyline. The city pulsed below like a living thing, lights flickering, lives moving. Her arms crossed beneath her chest. Behind her, Roger spoke. "I didn't bring you up here for business." She didn't turn around. "Then you're wasting my time." He stepped closer. Not too close, just enough for her to feel the heat of him. "Time's never wasted with you," he said. She finally turned. "Then say what you came to say." Roger ran a hand over his jaw, visibly unsettled. Not by her, but by the war inside himself. "I've been trying to unlearn a lot of things," he said slowly. "About myself, about how I was raised, about what I was taught to believe was acceptable. About black women?" she asked flatly. He nodded once. "Yes." Kersey didn't flinch. She wanted to hear it. All of it. No sugar, no dance. He continued. "I said something stupid 3 years ago, something ugly. I didn't think about it, didn't even pause. That's the part that scares me." She was quiet. Roger took another step forward, his voice low. "But since working with you, watching you, something shifted. You don't just challenge me professionally. You undo me." She blinked. "Undo you." "Every day, I walk into that building thinking I've figured it out. The numbers, the contracts, the vision. And then you speak, and suddenly I realize I'm still a student." She tilted her head. "Why now?" "Because you're not just talented, you're truth, and I'm tired of hiding from it." Her breath caught, but she covered it quickly. He stepped closer. This time, they were only a breath apart. "I can't erase what I said," Roger murmured. "But I can tell you this, I see you now, not as a category, not as an exception. I see you." Kersey's voice was a whisper. "Why me?" His eyes searched hers. "Because everything I thought I wanted fell silent the moment you walked in that room." She held his gaze, and the walls between them began to fracture. There was no music, no script, no cue. But when he reached for her, she didn't stop him. And when his lips met hers, it wasn't tentative, it was hungry. It was the kind of kiss that didn't ask permission, because it already had it. Months of glances, weeks of tension, a lifetime of questions, all collapsing into a single moment of clarity. Roger's hand slid around her waist, pulling her into him. She let her tablet fall to the floor, arms wrapping around his neck. Their mouths moved in sync, breath ragged, bodies flush. The kiss deepened, then broke, then resumed, stronger. They stumbled backward until her back pressed against the cold glass window, the skyline framing her body like art. Roger's lips traced her jaw, then down the curve of her neck. She arched, exhaling sharply. "This changes everything," she whispered. "It already has," he breathed against her skin. He lifted her, effortlessly, set her on the unfinished marble counter against the opposite wall, her legs wrapped around his waist. The lines between restraint and need blurred fast. Her blazer dropped to the floor. His jacket followed, and the sound of her soft moan filled the empty space, echoing through concrete and steel. It wasn't about lust. It was about release, the kind only earned when two people decide to burn the past and build something else from the ash. She kissed him like she was rewriting a memory. He kissed her like she was the only truth he'd ever spoken. Their hands mapped skin. Lips discovered hunger. His mouth found the hollow of her collarbone, and she gasped his name like it meant more than just identity. It meant transformation. And in that unfinished room, high above the city, in a tower still being built, they tore down every wall between them. Later, breathless and tangled, she lay against his chest, their bodies. Still, the storm outside now, just light rain tapping the windows. Neither spoke for a long while, until she whispered, "You still have work to do." He nodded. "I know, and I'm not a reward. You're a revolution," he replied, kissing her temple. Her eyes fluttered closed, not in surrender, but in understanding. As they dressed in silence, Kersey gathered her things, straightened her blouse, and brushed a hand through her curls. Roger stood watching her, his shirt unbuttoned, chest still rising and falling from their shared fire. "You regret this?" he asked. She paused, then turned. "I regret nothing that shows me the truth." He stepped toward her again. "Then let me keep proving it. Start by being the man your future needs. Not just the man who says he's changed." Roger nodded, then leaned down and kissed her hand. Soft, intentional, wordless, the sky had opened, not with a drizzle, but a full downpour that smeared the skyline behind streaked glass. Rain slashed sideways across the windows of Sky Tower's upper floors, thunder rolling in the distance like an ancient drum. The site was mostly shut down for the evening. Most of the crew had already gone. But not Kersey, not him. Roger met her near the site elevator, holding two black umbrellas. He handed her one without a word. "What's this?" she asked, raising a brow. "A private walkthrough," he said. "In this weather?" His gaze was unreadable. "It's the best time." She hesitated. Something about his tone, the subtle strain in it. Curious, she took the umbrella. They moved through the corridors in silence. Lights flickered above unfinished doorways. Scaffolding lined the halls, wrapped in plastic and warning tape. But the floor he took her to, top of the building, above even the planned penthouse units, was different. "Is this part of the public plans?" she asked, stepping off the elevator. "No," he replied. "This was my father's idea before he passed, a private executive suite for key investors, never finalized, never built, but I kept the space open." They walked inside the vast shell of a room. Unpainted drywall, wiring exposed. One half-finished marble counter sat against a far wall. Floor-to-ceiling windows wrapped the perimeter, showcasing the city in all its storm-washed glory. It was raw and breathtaking. Kersey turned in a slow circle. "Why bring me here?" Roger didn't speak right away. He walked toward the window. The storm reflected in the glass behind him. Hands in his pockets. Posture tense. Kersey followed, stopping a few feet behind him. "I was raised to believe in control," he said finally. "In legacy, that feelings, real feelings, make men weak, that love is a transaction, that image is everything." She stood silent, listening. "My mother taught me who to avoid, who to accept, who to ignore." She didn't have to say the words directly, but the message was clear. He turned, locking eyes with her. And then you walked in and ruined all of it. Her breath caught. He stepped closer. You ruined the way I thought I understood people. What I believed about strength, about worth. Kersey's voice was soft. Is that a bad thing? He let out a breath. It's terrifying. She didn't move. He continued, his voice tighter now. I used to be able to walk into a room and see categories, boxes. You don't fit into any of them. You confront them, every second. Her throat tightened. He stepped even closer. There's a war inside me, Kersey, between who I was and who I can't stop becoming around you. Her fingers curled at her sides. And I don't know how to win that war, he said. She took a step forward. Then maybe stop trying to win. Just let it change you. The tension between them was unbearable now. Not hostile, but intimate. He reached up slowly, brushing a damp curl away from her cheek. Her skin warmed under his touch. I want to, he said. Her eyes searched his. Then show me. His lips met hers before the last syllable left her mouth. And it wasn't tentative. It was hungry, earned, deep. Roger kissed her like he needed to erase a lifetime of silence. Like his redemption started at her mouth. Their bodies collided, months of restraint unraveling in one long, desperate breath. Kersey clutched his collar, tugging him closer as her back met the unfinished wall. Thunder rumbled outside as his hands traced the curve of her waist, grounding her in every way that mattered. She kissed him back. Harder, no hesitations, no second-guessing. Only heat, only connection. Their silhouettes moved against the dark glass, city lights blinking below as rain streamed across the windows. Her blouse wrinkled in his fists. His breath hitched as her lips found the hollow of his neck. He pulled back just enough to look at her. You okay? He asked, voice husky. Kersey nodded, chest heaving. But then she whispered, Don't stop. He didn't. Roger lifted her onto the marble counter, her legs wrapping around his waist with instinctive precision. Their lips met again, wetter now, deeper. Her hands slid beneath his shirt, fingers tracing along hard lines and warm skin. He groaned softly, deep and low, into her mouth. There was no music, no script, just skin. And thunder, and years of unspoken longing being rewritten with every touch. Kersey whispered into his ear, If you're not ready for this, stop now. Roger's response was a trail of kisses down her throat. I've been ready, he said. I just didn't know what for. The storm roared louder, as if matching their rhythm. She pulled him closer. He pushed into her warmth. It wasn't just physical. It was emotional combustion. His voice broke between kisses. You undo me. Her answer was a moan, soft, desperate, raw. And when he entered her, still fully dressed, soaked in rain, hands trembling, it wasn't clumsy or frantic. It was reverent, slow, purposeful. He worshipped every inch of her like she wasn't a conquest, but a cathedral. She clung to him like the world outside didn't deserve this moment. And maybe it didn't. When it was over, they stayed locked together, her head on his chest, his hand tangled in her hair, neither speaking, just breathing, letting the rain fall and the world blur. The silence in the car was anything but empty. Roger's fingers drummed against the steering wheel, his eyes flicking between the road and the woman in his passenger seat. Kersey sat with one leg crossed, window half-cracked, the scent of rain and city-light breeze weaving through her curls. Neither of them had said much since leaving the Sky Tower site. There was no need to. Their bodies had already spoken, loudly. But even so, something about this moment felt more intimate than the hour they'd just spent pressed together on unfinished marble. He glanced over. I know a place. She turned toward him, curious. Not that kind of place, he added, lips curling faintly. Just somewhere quiet. Kersey arched an eyebrow. You always drive your CO leads to secret locations after work? Only the ones who ruin my ability to sleep, he muttered. She smiled, just a little. That was all the confirmation he needed. He took a left onto a quieter street. His penthouse didn't scream wealth. It whispered it. Subtle lighting, clean, masculine furniture, warm wood and cool steel. Art that wasn't trying to impress anyone. Floor-to-ceiling windows opened up to the entire city skyline. But none of that registered when he opened the door for her. What did? The way he stepped aside, without words, letting her lead. You want a drink? He asked, tossing his keys into a ceramic bowl. She shook her head. No. I want something real. Roger stopped, and then said, "Follow me." He led her into a bedroom designed for comfort, not conquest. Dark walls, a low bed, no unnecessary extravagance. She took it in slowly. "This doesn't look like a room meant to impress," she said. "It's not." He turned to face her. "It's where I stop performing." Kersey stepped forward. "Then stop." Roger inhaled sharply, and when she reached up to loosen his tie, he let her. They didn't rush, no tearing at clothes, no desperate groping, just slow, intentional unwrapping, a layer at a time. His shirt hit the floor. Her heels followed. Their hands mapped each other again, not just for lust but for memory, for clarity, for confirmation that this wasn't an accident. This was a shift, a surrender. On the bed she lay back, eyes fixed on his. "Show me," she whispered. He did. Roger worshipped her like she was rare silk. He started with her fingers, tracing the lines of her palm, then her wrist, then up her arm, kissing every inch. She arched into him as he lowered himself down. His mouth hovered over her breast, breath warm, gaze locked. "You're not furniture in a fantasy," he murmured. "I know," she replied, "but say it anyway." He kissed her chest, over her heart. "You're not a body to conquer. You're the standard." She closed her eyes and let herself be seen. He explored her like time didn't matter. His lips moved lower. He didn't just kiss her thighs. He listened to them, responded to every quiver, every intake of breath, until she gripped the sheets and called his name in a way that made him exhale with need. Then he came up slowly and slid inside her, not with force, but with reverence. Her gasp met his groan in a rhythm that belonged to no one else. They moved like they'd done this before, but knew they'd never done it this way, with intention. She wrapped around him, not to pull him closer, but to anchor him. And when their pace slowed, when the tension broke, when her body stilled beneath him, he didn't collapse. He stayed. Inside her, around her, with her. They didn't speak for several minutes, just held each other in the glow of the quiet room. Then Kersey murmured, "You make it hard to pretend you're still the same man." Roger let out a breath. "I'm not, but I'm also not finished becoming the one I should have been all along." She looked up at him. "Then don't stop now." Later, wrapped in a throw blanket, she sat on the edge of his couch as he brought her a glass of water. "I don't usually do this," she said. "Stay over?" "No. Let down my guard." He knelt in front of her, gently brushing a thumb across her knee. "Then don't call it letting down. Call it letting in." Her throat tightened. "You think you're ready for me, Roger?" He didn't flinch. "I think I've never been ready for anyone. Until you—" Kersey leaned in and kissed his forehead. Soft, almost mothering, and yet deeply rooted in trust. That night, they didn't touch again. They simply laid side by side, breathing, rebuilding, learning how to rest in each other without defense. The storm had stopped outside, but inside them, something else had just begun. They arrived at the morning meeting 5 minutes apart. Kersey stepped into the 40th floor conference room wearing a sharp cream blazer and black tailored trousers. Her curls were pulled into a sleek knot. Confident, composed, untouchable. Roger entered just as she sat down, navy suit crisp, jaw tighter than usual, a small smile tugging at the edge of his mouth. They didn't greet each other. They didn't have to. But the tension in the room was different now. Not new, just changed. Like something intimate had quietly settled between them, beneath the design revisions and budget lines. As the team presented updates on steel deliveries and revised timelines, Roger watched her, not with lust, with awe. Kersey had a presence that commanded without force. She asked questions with precision. She corrected flawed ideas with calm authority. She made the entire boardroom feel like a classroom, where she was the one teaching what true excellence looked like. When the meeting wrapped, she collected her folder. "Miss Noel," Roger said, as the others began to filter out. She glanced up. "Stay back for a moment?" Her brow lifted, but she nodded. Once the door clicked shut, silence fell again. Roger walked to the head of the table. She remained near the wall, posture straight. "I've been thinking about the rooftop space again," he said. She crossed her arms. "You've changed your mind on the seating?" "No," he replied. I've changed my mind on waiting. Kersey tilted her head. Waiting? He moved toward her slowly, gaze serious. Waiting to say what I've been carrying. She didn't move. He stopped inches away. I think about you all the time. In meetings, in elevators, when I try to sleep. I keep replaying every time you've challenged me. Every time you walked away instead of giving in. Her throat tightened. I don't want to pretend anymore, Roger said. Not here. Not with you. Kersey's voice was calm, but low. You think this is the right place for that? He stepped even closer. This isn't about place, it's about timing. And mine's been wrong for too long. She should have pushed back, told him to stay professional, reminded him where they were. But when he touched her face, just once, gently, her body leaned in before her logic could argue. His lips met hers, and this time, it wasn't desperate. It was deliberate. He kissed her like she was fragile but unbreakable. His hand slid around her waist, pulling her against him. She melted into him, fingers finding the edges of his shirt, curling against the tension in his chest. It was quiet, intimate, dangerous, because it wasn't rushed. It was real. Roger, she whispered, pulling back slightly, breath shallow. This changes everything. I want it to. That evening they skipped the penthouse. They didn't need wine or skyline views. They needed honesty. They needed each other. Back at his place, the door barely closed before their hands found familiar places. She stripped her blazer without breaking the kiss. He peeled her blouse with a reverence that made her gasp. She pressed her body against his in the hallway, back against the wall, lips on his neck, hands dragging his belt loose. They made it to the bedroom this time. But it wasn't about the bed. It was about all the space they'd filled with resistance finally collapsing. Roger took his time. No talking. Just action. Her bra fell to the floor. His shirt followed. He kissed down her spine slowly, until her knees trembled, and then lifted her into his arms as if she weighed nothing. He didn't toss her onto the bed. He laid her down like she mattered. Because she did. This time, there was no storm outside. But inside them? Electricity. Kersey's moans filled the room in waves, soft, rhythmic, escalating. Roger's mouth moved between her thighs with precision and patience, learning every response, every grip of the sheets, every staggered breath. She gripped his shoulders, guiding him into her. And when he entered her, the stillness in the room broke, because now it wasn't discovery, it was claiming, it was choosing. They moved in sync, the pace slow, the intimacy thick. His hands cradled her face as he whispered words he'd never said to anyone. I see you. I'm learning you. I want all of this. She responded with more than words, her body arching, meeting him, owning him. They climaxed together, groaning into each other's mouths, every muscle taut, every second stretched beyond logic. And when it ended, they stayed close. Not because of fatigue, because of safety. They lay on their sides, legs tangled, breathing in tandem. Roger brushed his lips across her shoulder. Kersey whispered, You keep doing that. I might think this is real. He smiled against her skin. It is. She turned to face him, her fingers tracing his chest. I'm not fragile, Roger. I know. But I've been dropped before. He met her eyes. Then I'll hold you like you've never been dropped. Only discovered. She didn't reply, but her hand on his chest stayed, until sleep took them both. And for the first time in a long time, neither of them dreamed alone. Letitia Wayne did not wait to be invited. She arrived at Roger's penthouse at 7:01 a.m. sharp, dressed in a gray wool coat, pearl studs in her ears, and a stare that could still freeze her son mid-sentence. The doorman had barely nodded before she stepped into the elevator without announcing herself. She didn't believe in warning shots. She believed in order. When Roger opened the door, hair tousled, still in a cotton t-shirt, his face tensed the moment he saw her. Mother, you've been avoiding my calls, she said, brushing past him like she owned the place. I've been busy. She gave a single laugh. It wasn't pleasant. Busy entertaining the woman who's causing quite the stir in our circle. Roger closed the door behind her. If you came here to insult someone who isn't in the room, don't. Letitia turned slowly, setting her gloves on the console. Roger, we don't have to dance around it. This situation, it's reckless, short-sighted, and it reflects terribly on you. He leaned against the wall, arms crossed. How does designing a tower with a brilliant woman reflect badly on me? She narrowed her eyes. You know I'm not referring to architecture. I'm referring to the rumors about your relationship. Roger's jaw tightened. I don't care about the whispers, he said flatly. You should, Letitia snapped. You're a Wayne. There are expectations, responsibilities. We don't marry outsiders. His head snapped up. Outsiders? He repeated, voice suddenly cold. Letitia's expression didn't waver. You know what I mean. Say it, he challenged, out loud. Say what you really mean. She didn't blink. You cannot build a future with a woman who looks like her. It will never be accepted. Silence cracked between them. Then Roger took a step forward. I don't remember asking for anyone's acceptance. Letitia's nostrils flared. You think love is enough to protect you from the consequences? No, he said, but her love is worth more than your approval. She went still. You're willing to sacrifice everything your father built for a distraction? Roger didn't yell. He didn't flinch. He simply said, I'd burn it all down to build something she could stand in. Letitia's face trembled for the first time. A flicker, small, but unmistakable. You'll regret this, she whispered. Roger stepped closer. No. I regret not seeing her sooner. Her jaw locked. There's no wedding. There will be. Letitia raised her chin. Then I won't be there. He nodded once. Good. She turned and walked out without another word. And when the elevator doors closed behind her, Roger leaned back against the door and exhaled like a man who had finally buried a ghost. Downstairs, Kersey had just stepped out of her car. She'd seen the tail end of Letitia's departure. Polished hair, straight spine, frosted stare. She hadn't needed an introduction. She knew who she was. And she knew what the visit had been about. Inside the penthouse, Roger poured himself a drink. Kersey entered a few moments later, eyes unreadable. Your mother wears anger like perfume, she said. Roger gave a dry smile. You saw her? Just missed the fireworks. He handed her the glass. They weren't fireworks, just ashes. Kersey took the drink but didn't sip it. You okay? She asked. He nodded. Better than I've ever been. She sat beside him on the couch. You stood up to her. He looked at her. I didn't stand up to her. Kersey frowned. What do you mean? I walked away. I chose you. She blinked. Not because she was surprised, but because hearing it meant something. Later that evening, Roger sat on the edge of his bed, phone in hand. He typed a message. To Kersey subject, clarification. There's no confusion, no pretending. You're not temporary, and I'm not asking for more time. I'm asking for a chance to prove every part of me wants to stand beside you, not behind you, not over you, beside you. He hovered over send for a full breath, then pressed it. Kersey read the message just as she lit a candle on her nightstand. She didn't reply, but she smiled and let the flame burn. Roger didn't see his mother for weeks after that morning. Not at board meetings, not at the country club, not even at the charity fundraiser she co-hosted every fall. The absence wasn't a mistake. It was a message, but Roger had stopped reading her signals. He was writing his own story now, and Kersey was the page one. In the second week of December, Letitia sent a note through her assistant. No call, no voice, just 2 sentences typed and printed on expensive paper. We need to speak. Discretion expected. Come alone. Bull W. Roger didn't respond immediately. He waited a day, then another. When he finally walked into the private tea room at the Wayne Foundation offices, Letitia was already seated. The air was perfumed with hibiscus and quiet judgment. You look tired, she said. I sleep well these days, he replied, removing his coat. Do you? Roger folded his hands. Let's not waste each other's time. Say what you want to say. Letitia looked at him for a long time. She wasn't just angry anymore. She was unnerved. I raised you to be strategic, she said. To preserve what your father built. To make decisions that protect the name you carry. Roger didn't move. And I've decided that name means nothing if it comes at the expense of my integrity. Letitia's teacup clinked gently as she set it down. You're planning to propose, aren't you? Roger said nothing. That was enough. She leaned forward. Roger, you're throwing away a life of privilege for a woman who will always have to explain herself in rooms built by men like us. No, he said quietly. I'm building new rooms. With her. Letitia exhaled. a sound of frustration and disbelief. You don't think the board will push back? They can push, he said. They don't get to dictate who I love. Her expression cracked for a split second. Then she composed herself. So you'll do this without your family's blessing? Roger stood, slipping on his coat. There are blessings I value more. He turned to leave. Leticia's voice stopped him. If you walk out now, there's no coming back. He paused, then looked over his shoulder. I'm not walking out. I'm walking towards something better. He left her sitting there, pearls stiff around her neck, legacy clutched in her trembling hands. That evening, Kirsty stood on the rooftop of her studio building, wind teasing her curls as she looked over the glowing city. She knew the conversation had happened. She didn't need details. Roger joined her minutes later, wrapping his coat around her shoulders without asking. How bad? She asked softly. Final, he replied. She turned to him. You sure? He cupped her face gently. I've never been more sure of anything. She smiled, a small flicker of pride in her eyes. Then let's keep going. He kissed her forehead, and they watched the city in silence, two hearts louder than all the traffic below. Later that week, during a late meeting on the 38th floor, one of the junior architects whispered to her colleague, she's the one. The woman he changed for. Kirsty heard it, and didn't correct her, because it wasn't about changing for her. It was about becoming for himself, and she had simply held the mirror. The magazine cover didn't just trend. It stopped traffic. Architectural Grace, January, featured Kirsty Noel, the woman who reimagined the skyline and refused to shrink. There she stood, 8 months pregnant, wrapped in a shimmering gold gown that hugged every curve. Her arms were gently positioned behind her back, her chin lifted slightly, eyes calm, not defiant, not inviting, commanding. She wasn't smiling. She didn't need to. The image spoke louder than words. I built this. I am this. The features spread across pages like scripture. No one focused on her relationship status. Not first, not even second. They talked about her design innovations, her sustainability philosophy, the fact that she'd incorporated Afrocentric elements into a billion-dollar structure without once asking for permission. But by page 8, the headline arrived. Yes, I'm carrying triplets. No, I'm not asking for permission. The interview excerpts rippled across social media like wildfire. Motherhood doesn't make me soft, it makes me sharper. Roger didn't rescue me. He caught up. Legacy is not about how you're remembered. It's about what you build while you're here and who you build it with. Inside the Wayne Horizons boardroom, Roger watched as 3 senior executives tried not to visibly sweat. This feature's getting attention, one of them said cautiously. Mixed reviews. Roger looked up from the tablet. What's mixed about it? Well, she's outspoken. She didn't hold back. She never has, Roger said. That's why I trust her more than anyone in this building. A beat of silence. Is it true then? One asked. You're stepping back, for good? Roger leaned back in his chair. I'm handing over day-to-day control. I'm still chairman. But Wayne Horizons is no longer about one man's legacy. He stood slowly. It's about partnerships. It's about inclusion. It's about knowing when to lead and when to make space. He closed the tablet and walked out without another word. Later that evening, Kirsty sat at home, feet propped up on a velvet ottoman, a hand resting gently on the round curve of her belly. 3 soft kicks fluttered beneath her palm. She smiled, then scrolled to the latest comments on the digital version of her magazine spread. This is what power looks like. Pregnant and unbothered. Queen. Never knew I could cry over an architect. But here we are. Roger Wayne is lucky EF. Black women been the blueprint. She paused, taking it in. Not the praise, the impact. Her phone buzzed. Roger, don't cook tonight. I'm bringing dinner, and dessert, and a neck massage. She grinned. Kirsty, just bring extra fries. The girls are demanding. Roger, Cassian says he wants a burger. I don't care if he can't talk yet. Kirsty, Darian is currently kicking me for daring to breathe while reclining. Roger, Sarai just made me cry with a Spotify playlist. Kirsty, they're not even born yet. Roger, exactly. That weekend, Kirsty received a handwritten letter. No return address. The handwriting was delicate, familiar. Leticia Wayne, I saw the magazine. You look strong and beautiful. I may never understand all of it, but I see the way he looks at you now. And I know what that means. I won't attend your wedding. But I'll send a gift. Take care of my grandbabies. No signature. Just a slanted LW at the bottom. Kersey folded the note slowly. She didn't cry. She didn't gloat. She simply slipped it into a drawer beside her bed and whispered under her breath, "Progress." The clinic was quiet that morning. No chaos, no chatter, just the steady rhythm of a waiting room playlist humming in the background and the distant buzz of nurses in soft sneakers. Kersey sat alone, the soft cotton gown folded over her knees, her heart tapping a slow rhythm beneath her ribs. The ultrasound room was cool, lit gently. The technician, a young woman with kind eyes, applied the warm gel to her belly. "You ready?" she asked. Kersey nodded, lips pressed into a line. She wasn't nervous. She was something else, something that didn't yet have a name. The screen flickered, and then there they were, tiny, pulsing, alive. 3 distinct flickers, 3 steady thuds. The technician leaned forward slightly, adjusting the wand. "Hold on," she said softly. "Looks like 1, 2, a pause, 3. Kersey blinked. 3 what? 3 heartbeats, the technician said, looking over with a slow smile. Triplets. Silence. Then breath. Then... Kersey laughed. Not loudly, not hysterically, just a single exhale of disbelief. And then, tears. Not from fear, from awe. She walked out of the clinic holding the black and white image like it was a national treasure. 3 peanut-sized souls. 3 chances to rewrite every narrative. Roger arrived at the penthouse an hour later, tossing his keys into the tray before calling out, "Kersey?" "In here," she answered. He stepped into the living room, loosening his tie. "I got you that peppermint tea you like. Figured with the way you've been feeling." She held up the scan. No words, just the picture. Roger blinked, walked closer, took the sonogram from her hand, read the technician's notes, then stared at the 3 small dots labeled A, B, and C, and didn't speak. Not for a full minute. Then, he dropped to his knees, not in panic, not in prayer, in promise. He pressed his forehead to her belly and whispered, "I will never fail you, any of you." She placed both hands on his head, fingers weaving through his hair. He didn't cry, not in front of her, but his voice cracked when he said, "You've changed everything." Her smile was watery. "We both did." They sat on the couch for hours, naming possibilities. Cassian, bold. Darian, warm. Sarai, unshakable. They didn't know who was who yet, but they already knew the souls were forming with purpose. Later that evening, Roger sent a message to his board. It read, "Effective immediately, I will be reducing all non-essential obligations for the remainder of the year. My priority is the family I'm building and the woman who made me worthy of it." He didn't elaborate. He didn't ask permission. He simply chose what mattered most. That night, Kersey lay in bed beside him, staring at the ceiling, one hand over her stomach. Roger reached for it, lacing their fingers. "You think they can hear us?" he asked. "They're always listening," she replied. He leaned over and pressed a kiss to her belly. "I don't have all the answers," he said quietly, "but I have all the reasons now." Kersey turned toward him, heart steady. "Then we're ready." The nursery wasn't finished. The paint samples still clung to the wall in imperfect swatches. 1 shade of sage green, 1 muted almond, 1 stubborn gray Roger kept lobbying for despite Kersey's playful veto. The crib pieces were still in boxes. The mobile still sat unassembled on the couch. But none of it mattered right now. Kersey stood in the center of the room in a long robe, both hands gently cupping the curve of her belly. Roger watched from the doorway. He had never seen her like this. Glowing, yes, but something else too. Powerful, grounded, monumental. "Come in," she said, not turning. He stepped inside slowly. "The contractor says we'll have the ceiling done by next week," he offered. Kersey hummed. "They're not waiting for the ceiling." She turned to face him, eyes steady, but a little softer than usual. "They move differently now," she said. "Like they're aware, like they're listening." Roger stepped closer, then dropped to one knee. Not for romance, not for ceremony, for devotion. He pressed both hands on either side of her stomach and rested his forehead gently against the swell. "Hey," he whispered, voice breaking. "It's me." Kersey's hand stroked the top of his head, cradling him. Roger didn't rush. He stayed there, breathing them in, speaking low. "You don't know me yet," he said, "but I know you, and I promise this. There won't be a day in your life where you'll have to wonder if you were wanted." He kissed the bump. "Not a moment where you'll have to prove your worth to anyone. You were born valuable." Another kiss. To the world. To her. To me. His voice dropped to a whisper. "I don't care if I build 1,000 towers. If I don't build a safe world for you, I've built nothing." Kersey watched him. The man who once scoffed at the idea of loving someone who looked like her, now on his knees before the children they made together. Not with guilt, but with grace. Later that evening, he pulled her into his lap on the couch, both of them, wrapped in a blanket as the rain pattered softly against the windows. She rested her head on his shoulder, eyes closed. "You're not who I met," she whispered. "No," he murmured. "I'm not." She lifted her head slightly. "But you're who I needed." His grip tightened around her, and for the first time in his life, he felt complete. Not because he had everything, but because he knew what he never wanted to lose. Later that week, they attended a prenatal class. Roger took notes, actual notes, asked questions, held her water bottle between discussions like it was a sacred item. When the instructor passed around practice dolls, he cradled his like it was glass. One of the other fathers chuckled. "First-timer?" Roger smiled. "Triplets." The room gasped. Someone asked if he was scared. Roger looked over at Kersey, then back at them. "I was," he said. "But then I met their mother." That night, in bed, Kersey whispered, "You're going to be a good father." He kissed her forehead. "No," he replied. "I'm going to be the best student. You're already the teacher." She laughed into his chest. Not because it was funny, because it was true. The power had gone out for just a moment. A windstorm rolled through the city, knocking branches against windows and chasing clouds across the moon. Inside the penthouse, the lights flickered once, then returned, softer this time, like even the house had learned to whisper around her growing body. Kersey lay on her side in bed, propped up by 4 pillows, one hand cradling the curve of her stomach. The babies had been active all evening, shifting, tumbling, kicking as though trying to find each other. Roger came in with a small tray, warm milk and a slice of banana bread. "I'm already spoiled," she said, voice sleepy. "Get used to it," he replied. She took the cup from him and sipped. "They've been restless. They're plotting," he said, slipping into bed beside her. "I can feel it. They're already making secret plans." She smiled. "Rearranging organs for fun." Roger leaned down, brushing his lips across the top of her belly. "All right," he said. "Since you 3 clearly have something to say, we might as well start figuring out who's who." Kersey tilted her head. "You serious?" He looked up, dead. She nodded once, then set the cup on the nightstand. "Okay," she whispered. "Let's name them." He sat up straighter. "First one," he said. "The one who's always kicking. The bold one. Fierce." Kersey's hand drifted to her right side. "Cassian." Roger blinked. "You already picked that?" She nodded. "It came to me the first time I felt him move. Like he wasn't just here, he was claiming space." Roger smiled slowly. "Cassian it is." He kissed the spot gently. "Second one," she said, touching her lower belly. "The one who reacts more than starts things. The one who flutters back when I laugh." Roger closed his eyes, thinking. "Darian," he said. "Why that?" "Because it sounds like someone who sees the good first. The one who doesn't rush to speak but makes you listen when he does." Kersey nodded. "Darian." He kissed that spot too. "And the last," she said, voice quieter now, the one tucked highest, the one who's quieter but steadier. She placed her palm just beneath her ribcage. "Sarai," she whispered. "She's the one carrying all the wisdom." Roger stared at her. "That was my grandmother's name," he said softly. Kersey looked at him in surprise. "She raised my father," he continued. "Taught him that silence can be a power, not a weakness. Then it's hers now." "Sarai," he echoed, placing his hand over hers. And just then, a kick. They both gasped. Roger laughed out loud. She agreed. They stayed like that, naming their children out loud, repeating the syllables until they felt like prayers. Cassian, Darian, Sarai. Each name a promise. Each name a legacy. Later that night, Roger couldn't sleep. He walked to the nursery and sat on the floor with a notepad, sketching out ideas, layouts, colors, a trio of cribs arranged like a constellation, a soft rug in the center, shelves of books, and above all, a ceiling mural that reflected the stars. Kersey found him there, barefoot, hair wild. "You're nesting," she teased. "I'm planning," he replied. She sat beside him, leaning her head on his shoulder. "You used to plan towers." He looked down at her belly. "I still am," he whispered. "I'm just building them differently now." They sat there for a while, surrounded by boxes and bolts and plans. Not for a company, not for a launch, but for 3 lives, and a love story neither of them saw coming, but both were now protecting with everything they had. It started with a blurry photo. Roger's arm wrapped protectively around Kersey's waist as they exited a prenatal appointment. Her hand rested over her rounded belly, the soft drape of her maternity dress making it unmistakable. Wayne Tech heir expecting, with her? Inside Roger Wayne's secret life, and the woman changing it all. By noon, 6 major outlets had picked it up. By evening, it was trending globally. Some praised, some attacked, all speculated. Kersey stood in her studio's break room, phone in hand, the image glaring back at her from every news site. She said nothing as Ava hovered nervously nearby. "Should I contact a PR rep?" Ava asked. "No," Kersey replied, locking her phone and setting it down calmly. "We don't need to control the story. We just need to own it." Ava blinked. "You're sure?" Kersey turned, smoothing her dress. "I didn't climb my way into history just to shrink in the shadow of someone else's headline." Meanwhile, Roger's team scrambled. Emails flew. Shareholders called. Even his assistant whispered, "Maybe we should issue a statement, frame the narrative." But Roger stood at the edge of the boardroom, arms folded, watching the noise swirl around him like weather he no longer feared. "Let them write," he said. "They're late to the story anyway." The next morning, she responded. Not with a tweet, not with a press release, with a photo. Kersey stood in the atrium of her design studio wearing a one-shoulder caramel gown that hugged every curve of her pregnancy. Her head held high, her bare arm resting boldly beneath her belly. Caption: "Power isn't something given, it's something claimed." The photo broke the internet. Fashion blogs praised the elegance. Black-owned platforms hailed it as a moment of cultural reclamation. Architectural Digest requested an exclusive. The backlash still came, but it shrank in comparison to the wave of reverence. Back at the penthouse, Roger watched the reposts flood in. Kersey entered the living room to find him scrolling. He looked up. "You just silenced an entire industry," he said. She walked over, took the phone from his hand, and set it aside. "I didn't silence them," she said. "I made them listen." They stood at the window together, city lights pulsing below. Roger wrapped his arms around her from behind, hands resting over her stomach. "Do you regret it?" he asked. She leaned into him. "Which part? Letting them in?" "No," she whispered. "Because they don't get to define this." He kissed her shoulder. "This," she gestured to their reflection in the glass, "was never going to stay hidden. And I'm not hiding for people who were never going to understand us in the first place." That night, she received a message from a young architect in Detroit. "I saw your photo. I'm in my 3rd year of architecture school. No one in my family ever built anything. But now I think I can, because I saw you do it, without apology." Kersey read it aloud. Roger listened quietly. "That," she said, setting the phone down, "is the only headline that matters." And when the triplets kicked that night, soft, rhythmic nudges against the inside of her belly, she smiled into the dark and whispered, "You're already making waves." The press conference wasn't scheduled. It wasn't rehearsed. It wasn't about optics. Roger Wayne stood at the front of the Wayne Tech headquarters auditorium in a black suit, no tie, the top button of his shirt undone, sleeves slightly rolled. The podium in front of him bore the company's silver insignia, polished and gleaming under the lights. Cameras clicked. Reporters murmured. A few executive assistants whispered in the back rows, unsure what was about to unfold. He didn't read from a teleprompter. There were no pre-approved talking points, just a single folder tucked under his arm, and a decision he'd already made. "Thank you all for coming on short notice," he began, voice steady. "I won't take much of your time." He looked directly into the cameras. For years, I've led this company with a mindset I thought was strategic, efficient, controlled, but recently I realized something. I was leading a machine, not a movement. I was managing numbers, not nurturing people. There were murmurs. He continued, I've made mistakes, not just in business, but in how I saw the world, who I elevated, who I ignored. A silence followed. He let it breathe. Effective immediately, I am stepping down from my role as CEO of Wayne Tech. Gasps echoed. Someone dropped a pen. A board member in the second row blinked twice, visibly stunned. Roger raised a hand, not to calm the room, but to signal clarity. I'm not walking away. I'm stepping aside. I'll remain on the board and I'll continue to invest in Wayne Tech's future. But the day-to-day leadership will be passed on to people whose visions go beyond legacy. People who reflect the world as it is, not just as it was imagined by those who came before. A pause. He glanced at the cameras again. And yes, this decision was inspired by a woman who challenged everything I thought I knew, who saw through me and didn't walk away. Across town, Kersey watched the live stream from her studio, hand over her mouth. He hadn't told her, not because he was hiding it, because he knew it had to come from him. Roger closed the folder, stepped down from the podium, and exited through the side door without taking questions, not to avoid the noise, but to stay focused on what actually mattered. By that evening, headlines blazed. Roger Wayne steps down. Changes everything. I wasn't leading. I was surviving. From power to purpose, why he walked away. Some praised him. Some called it weakness. Others called it love. But none of it changed the truth. He wasn't chasing their approval. He was answering to something far deeper. He walked into the penthouse that night to find Kersey seated in a velvet chair, the city glowing behind her, her legs propped on a stool, her expression unreadable. You didn't tell me, she said softly. He stepped forward. I needed to say it first. To them. Before I could explain it to you. She nodded, slow. And now? He knelt in front of her again. This time not from guilt or devotion, but alignment. I don't want a throne, he said. I want a home. Kersey reached out, placed a hand on his cheek. You're building it, she whispered. And for the first time, he felt what true legacy meant. Not reputation, root. The new office didn't have a corner view. It wasn't perched above the skyline or coated in marble. There were no gold plaques, no private elevator, just a modest brick building tucked in the arts district, once a music school, now reborn, Wayne Horizons. The name glowed softly in bronze lettering above the entrance. No slogans, no logos, just intention. Roger stood in the center of the main floor, sleeves rolled, a folder under one arm. The walls were still bare, desks being installed. Fresh paint scent lingered in the air. Kersey entered behind him, arms crossed, belly full and glowing beneath a charcoal knit dress. She scanned the space. It's not as loud as the last one. It's not supposed to be, Roger said. She nodded, walking slowly along the perimeter. You're serious about this. I'm building something better, he said. Not just quieter, cleaner. Kersey turned, eyebrow lifted. Cleaner? Roger smiled faintly. Less ambition soaked in ego, more legacy built on impact. The mission was simple, but powerful. Invest in underfunded black-owned design firms, provide mentorship for minority youth in architecture, and fund innovation projects in communities that never get first dibs. No billion-dollar pipelines, no boardroom politics. Just focus and follow through. 3 weeks later, the first round of partners signed on. 2 were young founders from Baltimore. One had been denied loans 3 times before. The other had pitched to 5 VC firms without a callback. Now, they were working on a City Plaza redesign and being paid what they deserved. Roger watched their excitement from across the room during orientation and whispered to Kersey, "That used to be me." She leaned over and kissed his cheek. "Now you're the door they've been waiting to knock on." The media called it a pivot, a rebrand, but it wasn't either. It was repentance in action and vision handed down. Wayne Horizons hosted its first youth workshop a month later. A dozen high school students walked through the doors wearing backpacks and skepticism. By the time they left, they'd held 3D models, sketched blueprint mock-ups, and asked questions like, "How did you know what you wanted to be? Do people like us really make it in this field? What if no one ever believes in me?" Roger answered each question carefully, but when a 14-year-old girl raised her hand and asked, "What changed you the most?" he paused. Then he looked across the room. Kersey stood by the entrance, one hand resting on her stomach, the other pressed over her heart. Roger smiled. She did. Later that evening, the new team gathered on the rooftop for an informal dinner. Picnic tables, string lights, takeout containers from a Caribbean food truck. No speeches, no suits, just laughter. Shared ideas, community. Kersey sat on a wooden bench with her feet up, sipping from a chilled water bottle. Roger leaned beside her, elbow on the table. "This," he said, waving a hand at the scene, "feels right." She looked over. "Feels earned." He reached for her hand. "I used to think leadership meant being at the top. And now?" He laced their fingers. "Now I know it means lifting everyone else up with you, or you're just standing there alone." She nodded, a quiet smile dancing at the edge of her lips. Welcome to the real blueprint. The set was minimalist. No glitzy backdrops, no dramatic lighting, just 2 armchairs, a soft white rug, and an open window casting natural morning light across the space. A single camera rolled. The interviewer sat across from Kersey, tablet in hand, expression composed but eager. Across the internet, the live notification had already pinged phones across. The country, Kersey Noel speaks, legacy, love, and the life she built. Inside the studio, she sat calm and regal, dressed in a rust-colored wrap dress, her hair swept into a high bun, and her hands gently folded over her rounded belly. She didn't need glamour. She was the moment. The interviewer smiled. "First of all, congratulations on the babies." "Thank you," Kersey replied. "They're already running the show." Laughter rippled gently. "And also, congratulations on making waves in not just architecture, but media, culture, and business leadership spaces. You've become a symbol of transformation. How does that feel?" Kersey tilted her head slightly. "I'm not aiming to be a symbol," she said. "I'm just aiming to be visible, so the next girl who looks like me doesn't feel like she has to shrink to fit." The interviewer blinked, then nodded slowly. Powerful. They touched on everything. The Sky Tower project, the Wayne Tech contract, the scrutiny, the photo, the triplets, and then the question that landed like a stone. "Do you forgive him for what he once said?" Kersey paused, not because she didn't know the answer, because the question deserved silence before truth. "I don't forgive for his sake," she said. "I forgive because holding bitterness doesn't build anything. You can't create a future with bricks made from old pain." A beat. And the truth is, he didn't just change, he chose to, over and over. Not for me, for himself. That's when I knew I could trust him. Somewhere, watching on a screen in a back office at Wayne Horizons, Roger exhaled. That line hit him harder than any boardroom pitch or media headline. Not because it was praise, because it was truth. Back on set, the interviewer smiled softly. "What do you hope your children say about you one day?" Kersey looked toward the window. "I hope they say I didn't just build buildings. I built space for them to be full humans. Loud, soft, wild, brilliant, complicated. I hope they say their mother loved herself enough that they never questioned their own worth." The interviewer nodded. "And what do you hope the world says about Roger Wayne?" Kersey smiled gently. "I hope they say he stopped hiding behind privilege and started building with purpose. That he laid down the armor and picked up accountability. That he led from the ground instead of the pedestal." The chat section of the live stream exploded. Chills. "She speaks in blueprints. This woman is a revolution in heels. Now that's a comeback arc for both of them. Black love. Real love. Grown love. If you've ever had to speak truth in a room built to contain you, and turned it into a platform instead, comment, "They gave me a seat, but I brought a hammer." Like this story if you believe words can shift legacy. The interview closed with a final question. "What's next for you?" Kersey looked directly into the camera. "I'm about to birth 3 children. That's enough next for now. But after that, we'll see. Whatever I do, it'll be bigger, because I no longer ask if the world is ready for me." A pause. "I ask if I'm ready for the world I plan to shape next." Fade to black. Later that night, Roger pulled her gently into his lap in the living room. "Want to know the best part?" he asked. "What?" "You didn't talk about me too much." She grinned. "That's not your story to carry anymore." He kissed her shoulder. "No, but you'll always be mine. She leaned her head back against his chest. Then let's make sure our kids never forget what we came from and why we decided to rewrite it. The rooftop had no pews, just white chairs and soft curves lining the edge of a garden in the sky. No grand aisle, no orchestra, only the quiet hum of a harpist and the sound of a city holding its breath. Chicago gleamed below them like polished silver. The sun dipped low, golden lights spilling over the horizon like a blessing no one dared to interrupt. Roger stood at the altar in a crisp ash-gray suit, no tie, the top button undone, his heart clearly visible beneath the silk. Cassian, Darian, and Sarai sat in the front row in matching cream outfits. 2 boys fidgeting with excitement, their sister still in her godmother's arms. He wasn't nervous. He was waiting. And then she stepped out. No veil, no train, just Kersey in a form-fitting ivory gown that caught the wind like wings. Her hair was pinned with a single diamond comb. Her bouquet was calla lilies and eucalyptus, but it was her smile that made the officiant's hands tremble. That smile wasn't showy. It was earned. Roger took a sharp breath as she walked toward him. His mother wasn't there. The tabloids had been kept out. There were no paparazzi. Only those who mattered. His best friend from boarding school. Her mentor from design school. His new COO from Wayne Horizons. Her best friend turned sister, Talia, holding Sarai. Their future stood in that circle. When she reached him, he didn't speak at first, just stared. And then, softly, "You look like every vow I've ever meant but never said." Kersey's eyes glistened. "Say it now, then." The officiant cleared her throat with a knowing smile. "Let's begin." The ceremony was brief, but each word struck like lightning. She said, "You were once the man who looked through me. Now you're the man who made me feel seen. You taught me that some apologies aren't spoken, they're lived. You earned this moment not with words, but with work. And I say yes, because you made love feel like truth." He said, "I can't rewrite what I was, but I can wake up every day and choose who I become. You didn't soften me. You sharpened what mattered. You didn't save me. You revealed me. And I say yes, because you made me want to deserve love." When the rings came out, Cassian ran forward with the box. He tripped halfway there. The entire audience gasped, until Roger knelt, caught him, and whispered, "You're doing perfect." The crowd exhaled with laughter. Darian clapped wildly. Sarai giggled. Kersey didn't move. She just smiled. That was her family now. Messy, wild, real. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the officiant said. Roger didn't wait. He cupped Kersey's face and kissed her deeply. Not hungry, not rushed. Just finally. The reception was small but rich. A rooftop dinner beneath string lights and warm laughter. Kersey danced barefoot with Sarai in her arms. Roger slow danced with his sons, 1 foot on each shoe. The DJ played soft jazz. The chef served lemon thyme chicken and rosewater cheesecake. And during the toast, Roger stood with a glass in hand. "Tonight isn't about a wedding," he said. "It's about the choice to love even after it hurt. To grow even after you were told you didn't belong. To believe again, even after the world gave you every reason not to." He looked at Kersey. "This woman didn't save me. She challenged me. She held me accountable. She made me better." He paused. "She built me." Kersey rose beside him and touched her glass to his. "No, love," she said gently. "You built yourself. I just handed you the mirror." The vows had been spoken. The rings were warm on their fingers. The city pulsed beneath them like a heartbeat in sync with something eternal. But long after the guests had drifted away, long after the candles had burned low and their children had fallen asleep in Talia's suite upstairs, they remained. On that rooftop, just the 2 of them, still dressed in wedding attire, still wrapped in the holy hush of a night that changed everything. Roger sat on a cushioned bench, jacket off, collar open, barefoot, glass of water in one hand, the other resting on his knee. Kersey sat across from him, knees folded beneath her, gown pulled at her. Ankles, fingers twisting her new ring as if memorizing it by touch. No photographers, no speeches, no noise, just presence. "I've given 1,000 presentations," he said quietly, "but nothing ever scared me like writing those vows." Kersey tilted her head, smiling. "Why?" "Because it was the first time I had to speak, not to impress, but to confess." She nodded slowly. Confession is the birthplace of intimacy. He blinked. You always say things like that. Like what? Like you're building cathedrals with your words. She chuckled. That's how I survived. I made poetry out of things meant to destroy me. A silence stretched between them. Not awkward, sacred. Then Roger leaned forward, elbows on knees, voice lower now. You said something during the ceremony about how I didn't change, that you revealed me. She met his gaze. I meant it. He swallowed. No one's ever said that to me. Most people think love is about fixing someone. Kirsty shook her head. No, real love is a mirror, not a workshop. You are always more than what the world let you be. I just refuse to let you forget that. He looked down at his hands, turned them over like he was still adjusting to who they'd become. I don't want to be the man who used to need proving, he said. I want to be the man who makes room. Room for softness, for failure, for learning, for more. You already are, she whispered. He looked up. Then promise me something. Anything. Remind me when I forget, because I will. I'll get scared. I'll slip into performance. I'll default to power. And I'll need you. Not to rescue me, but to recenter me. Kirsty moved across the space and sat beside him. Her hand slid into his. I won't remind you with words, she said softly. I'll remind you with love. The wind kissed the rooftop. Roger rested his head against Kirsty's shoulder. I used to chase deals, brands, status, thinking that would make me whole. And now? She whispered. He turned his head, brushing his lips against her temple. Now I know. Wholeness isn't achieved. It's allowed. You gave me permission to stop performing. She kissed the side of his face. I didn't need you perfect. I needed you honest. Somewhere, a baby stirred. A faint cry floated in the distance. Their new reality waited. Feedings. Sleepless nights. Morning walks. Diaper bags beside architectural blueprints. Board meetings with spit-up-on collars. Late-night design sketches done one-handed while rocking a child with the other. It would be hard. Beautiful. Unrelenting. Soft. It would be theirs. As they stood to head inside, Roger stopped her again. One last thing, he said. Kirsty turned. Roger took both her hands. I vow, beyond the ceremony, beyond the dress, beyond the applause, to make our love a practice, not just a performance, a daily, humble, intentional practice. She squeezed his palms, and I vow to hold space for that. Even on the days when we forget, we'll remember each other. They kissed. No crowd, no spotlight, just vows in the dark, the kind that heal from the inside out. The screen fades in from black. Music swells, soft piano, layered with cello, tender and nostalgic. We open on Roger Wayne, not the CEO, not the mogul, just the man, learning how to be a father. Roger stands in a dimly lit room, holding Sarai against his bare chest, her tiny hand gripping the collar of his sleep shirt. His eyes are puffy, hair tousled, but his gaze is calm, focused. He paces slowly, hums off-key. Hush now, little one. I'm not perfect, but I'm here. Sarai coos softly. The mobile above them spins in slow, silent circles. Cassian is in his high chair, flinging mashed banana like an abstract artist. Darian wails from his bouncer seat. Roger, in sweatpants and no socks, is trying to spoon oatmeal into one mouth while dodging a sippy cup projectile. Kirsty walks in, eyebrow raised. He grins. We're fine. We're thriving. The camera lingers on the absurdity, the chaos, the joy. Roger walks into a meeting room at Wayne Horizons with Sarai strapped to his chest in a soft sling. The board members freeze. He raises a brow. She has a better track record than some of your portfolios. Laughter erupts. The meeting begins. Sarai sleeps through the entire quarterly report. In a hoodie and sunglasses, Roger pushes a double stroller through a Chicago park. He stops for ice cream, crouches to wipe sticky fingers, and lets the boys run barefoot on the grass. He's not recognized today, and he doesn't care. Because for once he's not performing, he's present. The babies are asleep. Kirsty works at her drafting table. Roger sits in the corner with a parenting book in one hand and a notepad in the other. He's taking notes, highlighting sections, mouthing phrases under his breath. Active listening builds trust. Yeah, makes sense. This is his homework now. No degrees, no accolades, just the sacred syllabus of showing up. All three children giggle as Roger kneels beside a tiny inflatable tub on their private balcony. He makes sea creature voices, pretends to be a submarine, gets soaked in the process. Kirsty films it from behind the sliding glass doors, laughing softly as her husband, the once untouchable billionaire, now sings lullabies with shampoo in his beard. Roger stands in the bathroom at dawn. Same suit, same tie. But now, beneath it, a baby monitor clipped to his belt, a Dada sticker on his planner, finger paint on the cuff of his shirt. He stares into the mirror. For the first time in his life, he recognizes himself. He doesn't see a mistake to hide. He sees a man becoming. The final image of the montage holds. Roger on the floor, asleep, one baby on his chest, the other curled under his arm, Sarai tucked into the crook of his neck. Kirsty covers them gently with a blanket, then places a hand on his head, not to fix, not to wake, just to honor the redemption she sees in his rest. He didn't arrive as the father they deserved. He became him, one diaper, one lullaby, one apology at a time. The moon sat low over Chicago, a silver coin resting against a velvet sky. Inside their penthouse, the children were asleep, the city's hum reduced to a distant lullaby. The fireplace glowed dimly in the corner, casting soft amber flickers over the walls. Kirsty stood at the window wrapped in Roger's black dress shirt, the hem brushing the tops of her thighs. Her hair was loose, wild, the way he loved it. A glass of water cradled in her hand. Her gaze, distant. Roger entered quietly behind her, barefoot, sleeves rolled, a sleepy softness in his eyes. No tie, no title. Just a man, called home. He watched her for a moment. Then, "You always stand like that when you're thinking about something hard." She didn't turn around. "It's not hard, just heavy. Want to share the weight?" She finally looked at him, eyes not worried but full. "Do you ever think about the man you used to be?" Roger walked to her slowly, taking the glass from her hand, setting it on the ledge. "I think about him every day. Does he haunt you?" He shook his head. "No, he humbles me." She studied his face. Then, quietly, "You're not the man I met." His reply came without hesitation. "No, I'm the man you made me want to become." Silence, charged, reverent. Her lips parted, but no words came. Just breath, just awe. He stepped closer, his hand rising to cup her jaw. "You believed in me. Before I had proof. You gave me proof. By becoming..." He brushed his thumb along her cheek. "Tell me what you're really thinking." Kirsty looked down, voice soft. "I didn't know it was possible, for someone to grow and not lose themselves in the process." He lifted her chin. "You didn't meet a man who was whole. You met a man who was hiding. You saw me, even when I wasn't ready to be seen." They stood in that quiet space, two people shaped by battles, softened by grace. Kirsty stepped closer, placing her hand over his heart. "Sometimes I wake up and still expect the cold, the old distance, the dismissiveness." Roger's brows drew in, but he didn't flinch. He didn't rush to defend. He listened. "That was new." She continued, "But then you do something small, like how you cradle Sarai when she's restless, or how you let the boys mess up your shirts with peanut butter and you don't care. And I remember," he whispered. "Remember what? That love can grow, and it can teach." They walked slowly to the couch, hand in hand. No rush. She curled into him. He pulled the blanket over their legs. They didn't need candles or violins or grand declarations tonight. Just breath, skin, memory. "Do you know when I first fell for you?" he asked. Kirsty turned toward him, eyes curious. "The night you yelled at me in the rain." She laughed softly. "You mean the night I called you an arrogant, soulless architect of loneliness?" "Exactly that one." She shook her head, still laughing. "You're unbelievable." He kissed her temple. "No, I'm finally believable." They fell into silence again, not out of emptiness, but peace. Then, just before her eyes fluttered closed, she whispered, "Thank you for not just choosing me once, but for choosing me every day." Roger looked down at her, his voice thick. "Thank you for letting me earn that right." In the distance, Sarai stirred. One of the boys murmured in his sleep. The world would call again in a few hours. But tonight was theirs. He didn't just become a husband or a father. He became worthy. Because love didn't just forgive his past. It rewrote his future. The morning sun crept slowly across the floor of the penthouse nursery, casting golden light over the soft pastel walls and the chaos that had become a daily masterpiece. Diapers scattered like confetti. A pacifier stuck to Roger's button-down. Sarai babbling as she tried to chew the corner of a board book. Cassian banging a plastic spoon on the side of the crib like a drummer in a jazz band. Darian somehow managing to escape the baby gate. Again, Roger stood in the middle of it all, blinking slowly. No assistance, no boardroom silence. Just 3 infants, 1 determined wife, and a life that felt full. "Kersey," he called, holding a leaking sippy cup like a man clutching a grenade. "This one's defective." She peered over the kitchen island where she was blending baby food. "That's not defective, babe. That's parenthood." He exhaled, then grinned. "I used to think managing a billion-dollar portfolio was hard." Kersey raised a brow. "Try cutting 3 tiny fingernails before breakfast without causing a civil war." Kersey changed Sarai's diaper with one hand while singing softly under her breath. Roger held Darian, who was teething, and furious about it. Cassian giggled from inside his crib, plotting his next escape. "Is it bedtime yet?" Roger asked, eyes wide. "It's 9:42 in the morning." "Right. Just checking." They had routines now, chaotic, inconsistent, but theirs. Morning melodies from the sound machine. Crib rotations. Lullabies sung at 3 a.m. with hoarse voices and hopeful hearts. Roger, once a man who barked orders into Bluetooth earpieces, now gently hummed "Twinkle, Twinkle" while rocking a baby with his foot as he tried to warm a bottle. Kersey, who once drafted floor plans for skyscrapers at midnight, now designed bedtime rituals. A storm raged outside. The city glistened with rain. Inside the nursery, Darian cried. Roger stumbled in half asleep, picked him up, and whispered into the soft dark. "Hey, it's okay. I got you." He didn't outsource comfort. He offered it. No one clapped. No one praised. But a bond was forged in those quiet, sacrificial hours. Kersey set up a baby playpen in the center of the living room, while Roger assembled a miniature rocking horse without the instructions. Pride fully engaged, logic missing. She smirked. "You sure that thing's stable?" "Of course," he said confidently. Seconds before it wobbled and collapsed. Cassian clapped. Kersey burst out laughing. Roger gave a theatrical bow. The laughter, their laughter, wasn't polished. It was real. Laughter with spit up on shoulders and mashed peas in their hair. Laughter not despite the mess. Laughter because of it. 3 babies. 3 cribs. One by one, they were laid down. Roger kissed Sarai's cheek. "Dream of building things that matter." Kersey stroked Darian's curls. "Dream of being loved for all you are." They both leaned over Cassian, whispered in unison, "Dream in color." Then they held hands, dimmed the lights, let the hush settle over the room like a lullaby only their hearts could hear. They hadn't figured it all out, but every bottle warmed, every tear wiped, every off-key lullaby was a brick in the legacy they were building. A legacy not of wealth or walls, but of presence, patience, and love that refused to quit. Kersey stood in front of the black and gold glass doors, her heels silent against the marble floor. The lettering above read, "Hudson and Verity or Bespoke Interiors." It was real now. Not just a dream whispered into a baby monitor or sketched during nap times. Not a side project in between feedings. It was hers, her vision, her voice, her studio. And today was the grand opening. The scent of fresh eucalyptus filled the entryway. Cream walls stretched tall, kissed with copper trim. A gallery of her past projects lined the corridor, each one framed like art, each one a declaration. "I'm here, I've arrived, and I did not shrink to fit anyone else's blueprint." Inside the open concept lobby, guests buzzed, architects, investors, design, columnists, and a few loyal clients who'd stuck with her from the beginning. But Kersey's eyes searched for only one, and there he was. Roger stood by the glass divider, holding Sarai on his hip while Cassian tugged on his tie and Darian tried to climb a planter. Chaos in motion. But his smile? Steady, full, proud. He mouthed across the room, "Queen of the hour." She winked back. "You should do it," Roger had said, kneeling on the nursery floor while stacking blocks with the boys. "Not because you need to prove anything, but because the world deserves your design language." Kersey had hesitated. I don't want to lose time with the babies. Then, let's build it around them. Around us. So they had. A family-first business model. Remote project management. A studio with an on-site nursery. Design that didn't apologize for femininity or function. Kersey took the golden scissors, hands steady. Roger stood behind her, one hand resting on her shoulder. With a gentle snip, the ribbon fell. Cameras flashed. Applause echoed. But all she could hear was her heartbeat and one small whisper in her mind. You were never just someone's wife or someone's mother. You were always a world builder. Kersey guided the press through the studio, her voice smooth and confident. This is our concept suite, she said, gesturing toward a space flooded with natural light. We build dreamscapes here. Every corner is curated for elegance, functionality, and heart. One reporter asked, what sets Hudson and Verity apart? She didn't flinch. We don't just design rooms. We craft experiences for families, for healing, for legacy. At the back of the studio hung a glass wall engraved with 3 names. Sarai, Darian, Cassian. Beneath, in gold script. The reason I dared. Roger caught her there alone later, fingers grazing the glass. I can't believe you did all this, he whispered. She turned to him. I didn't do it despite being a mother. I did it because I am one. The studio was quiet again. The team had gone home. The babies were napping in the glass. Walled nursery Kersey had designed just for them. She walked the space slowly. Her crown wasn't jeweled, but made of calloused palms, sleepless nights, and dreams resurrected. And in the quiet, she smiled to herself, not because it was easy, but because it was hers. She didn't inherit a throne. She built one, with vision in her bones, love in her hands, and courage stitched into every choice she made. It began not with a boardroom handshake, but a late-night conversation on the kitchen floor. The twins were asleep. Sarai had finally stopped teething. The dishwasher hummed like a lullaby, and Kersey leaned her head against Roger's shoulder, barefoot in sweatpants, sipping mint tea. You know, she murmured, we've both built something beautiful. Me with Verity, you with Wayne Enterprises. But what if we built something together? Roger turned to her slowly. You mean like a baby? She smirked. No. I'm talking about a business that belongs to both of us. They called it Wayne Horizons. Not just an extension of Roger's empire, and not merely a branch of Kersey's studio. It was a visionary alliance, a firm that blended architecture, luxury design, and purposeful living, where buildings didn't just rise, they meant something. Each space curated for function, beauty, and soul. Kersey would lead creative design and emotional intelligence strategy. Roger would helm development, sustainability, and global expansion. In a sunlit room above her studio, whiteboards were filled with sketches, fabric swatches, mission statements. The kids crawled between vision decks while their parents reimagined what the future could feel like. We're not just creating skylines, Kersey said one afternoon, pressing a pencil behind her ear. We're shaping how people feel inside their homes, their workspaces. We're turning structures into sanctuaries. Roger, leaning against the wall with a laptop, nodded slowly. Then this won't just be our next chapter, it'll be our signature. At the first investor roundtable, an older executive questioned the direction. A luxury design initiative tied to emotional fulfillment? Sounds like a passion project, not a profit model. Roger didn't flinch. Kersey didn't even blink. Roger stood, buttoned his blazer, and said, You're right. It is a passion project, because we're passionate about people, and when you build with heart, profit becomes the byproduct of purpose. Silence, then applause. Wayne Horizons was no longer a whisper. It had teeth. Their first official deal came from a client in Dubai, an eco-luxury resort that needed architectural poetry and mindful design. Kersey handled the guest experience blueprints, while Roger negotiated structural feasibility. They worked side by side, argued once, then laughed harder than they had in weeks. They signed the deal at sunset, golden light pouring across the table. Kersey whispered, We did that. Roger kissed her hand. We're just getting started. They installed a dual office setup in the corner of the Wayne Horizons penthouse floor. 2 desks, facing each other, divided by glass. Or, as Roger joked, our war room and our love den. Some days they wore suits, other days, pajamas. All days, they chose each other. Behind them on the conference room wall hung a framed quote, Build with love, lead with legacy. Under it, 3 photos. Sarai, sleeping peacefully in Roger's arms during a design review, Cassian drawing stick figures over blueprints, Darian wearing Kersey's reading glasses and babbling into a fake phone. They weren't just their why. They were the proof that business and love didn't have to compete. They could conquer together. This was no longer just about profit. It was about purpose and the future they were raising, both in skyscrapers and in sons and daughters, would remember that their parents didn't just dream, they delivered. The night was still. The babies were finally asleep. Cassian curled against his favorite pillow, Sarai hugging her elephant. Plush, and Darian sprawled like a miniature king across his blanket. Downstairs, the fire crackled in the study. Roger sat in his reading chair, a leather-bound notebook open on the desk. Kersey stood by the window, arms folded gently over her heart. There were no cameras, no board meetings, no grand opening to prepare for. Only a quiet agreement between two parents who wanted to leave their children something far more permanent than wealth. "Let's write them something they can't inherit," she had whispered. "Let's give them something they'll feel at 18. Kersey picked up the pen first, her handwriting looped with grace and clarity. "To our dearest Sarai, Darian, and Cassian, today you are little. The world is big, and one day you'll read this not as children, but as young adults standing at the edge of your own beginning." Roger took over, his script tighter, firmer, like his presence. "We didn't build a legacy for you to be impressed by. We built it so you could be free to write your own. Don't let our success intimidate you. Let it inspire you. We want you to know how this all started, and why we did what we did." They wrote about the rainy nights, the failures, the doubts. Kersey added, "I started over with nothing but vision and 3 babies who couldn't yet speak, but who gave me reason to never stop creating." Roger added, "I used to believe I was powerful because I had control. But then I held you, tiny, screaming, helpless, and I realized real power was gentleness, consistency, and humility." They wrote with intention, every word chosen with weight. 1. On identity. "The world will try to name you. Don't let it. You were born with a soul no one else can duplicate. Live like you believe that." 2. On failure. "If you fail, fail forward." We did. We survived. Sometimes what you lose clears the path to what you truly deserve. 3. On love. "Choose love that sees you, flawed, messy, human, and stays anyway. That's the kind of love that built you." 4. On legacy. "We didn't build an empire to impress the world. We built it so you'd know anything is Kersey. Sarai, may your gentleness never be mistaken for weakness. There's fire in your tenderness. Use it to build, not burn." Roger, Darian, let your curiosity lead you. Question, explore, evolve, but never lose your compass, integrity. Kersey, Cassian, your laughter is a map. Follow joy without shame. Lead with light, even when the world asks for darkness. They signed the letter together, side by side. "We love you, not for who you might become, but simply because you're ours. If everything else we've built fades someday, know this: you were always our greatest creation. Love." Mom and Dad, Kersey and Roger, they sealed the letter in a mahogany envelope, locked it in a fireproof box labeled, "To be opened on your 18th birthday." Roger looked over at Kersey. "Do you think they'll understand all this when they're grown?" Kersey touched his hand. "Maybe not all of it, but they'll feel it, and sometimes that's more powerful than understanding." Outside, the city pulsed. Inside, legacy breathed. Not in vaults or headlines, but in words, in love, in something eternal. The sun hung low over the Wayne Horizons Academy, casting a warm amber glow across the freshly painted walls and blooming garden beds. A plaque at the front gate read, "Excellence is not inherited, it's nurtured. R.W. and K.W." Roger stepped out of his town car, adjusting his cufflinks as the children poured out of classrooms and into the courtyard for afternoon break. Their laughter sliced through the air, light, joyful, untamed. It was the sound of everything he used to miss. Before her. Inside, the corridors buzzed with art and ambition. Murals lined the walls, portraits of inventors, thinkers, trailblazers. Each door bore a quote above it. One caught his eye, "Character is louder than wealth." He stopped, resting his hand against the wall as the memory rushed in. The old version of him, sharp-suited, emotionally barricaded, indifferent to impact, would have walked past this school without a second thought. But this Roger, the man who had held triplets at 3 a.m., cried into his wife's collarbone, and rewritten his father's legacy. This Roger felt the walls, because he'd built them, not just with bricks, but with change. A cluster of fourth graders buzzed near the end of the hall. One girl, no older than 9, dark-skinned with cornrows and glittery sneakers, stood on her tiptoes, pointing up at a giant poster. Roger moved closer. It was Kersey, in an elegant cream blazer, arms folded confidently, her signature quote beneath. "Design your life like a room. Let nothing in that doesn't make you feel safe, inspired, and completely yourself." The little girl turned to her friends. "That's her, Miss Kersey. My mom said she made all this, like the buildings and the pillows and the trees outside. She's married to the big boss guy. But she runs stuff." Roger chuckled quietly, biting back a smile. The girl noticed him. "Mister, do you know her?" He crouched to her level. "I do. She's my wife." Her jaw dropped. "You're Mr. Kersey?" He laughed so hard, his eyes welled up. "Not exactly. But I'd be proud to be." Roger was led to the 5th grade classroom where he'd be reading to the students. Before opening the book, he paused, looking at their faces, brown, hopeful, curious. He cleared his throat. "Before we begin, I want to tell you something. My name is Roger Wayne. I used to think legacy was measured by money, but I was wrong. Legacy is what you build into others." He gestured around them. "This school wasn't just built from money, it was built from love, from my wife's vision, from my kids' laughter, from change. And I hope one day, one of you builds something even greater." A boy raised his hand. "Were you always good, Mr. Wayne?" Roger smiled. "No, I was broken, cold, afraid. But then I met someone who didn't try to fix me. She saw me, and little by little I became better, because love can do that." Later, as the sun dipped behind the skyline, Roger strolled the schoolyard alone. Children played beneath the tall sycamores. The sound of a basketball hitting pavement echoed somewhere nearby. He looked up again at the poster of Kersey, not as a CEO's wife, not as someone's mother, but as herself. Powerful, unapologetic, legendary. He touched the glass frame and whispered, almost to himself, "You didn't just change my world, you taught me how to build one worth living in." In the end, he didn't leave behind a shadow of domination. He left a garden of growth, and in a world that once bowed to his control, he finally found peace in surrendering to love. The city pulsed below, but up here, on the penthouse balcony, time felt like it had surrendered. The skyline was draped in hues of honey and coral, the final kiss of dusk brushing the towers with reverence. Wind danced lazily through the silk canopy overhead. The rooftop garden Kersey had designed bloomed around them, lavender, jasmine, baby's breath, fragrance curling like memory. Roger stood at the edge of the terrace, a blanket wrapped around his shoulders like a robe of quiet victory. One arm cradled Cassian. Sarai tugged at his leg, demanding a story. Darian had fallen asleep mid-sunset, curled against Kersey's thigh like he belonged nowhere else. He did. They all did. Kersey rose, her bare feet silent against the tile, and moved to his side. Roger glanced at her. No words, just eyes. Eyes that had once challenged him. Eyes that had forgiven him. Eyes that now, after everything, only held softness. She slid her arm through his. "They'll never know how hard we fought to give them this peace." "They don't need to," he said. "They'll feel it." Behind them, soft laughter erupted. Roger's mother was telling a story to Kersey's aunt over glasses of champagne. Their friends gathered around a small table, toasting to something unspoken but understood. Roger watched it all like a man finally content to observe, not command. This wasn't a party. It was a testament to every vow kept, every tear shed, every choice made in the name of love. Kersey picked up her glass of sparkling cider. "To the empire we didn't just build, but became..." Roger raised his, voice low but rich. "To the woman who made me, not a better man, but a truer one." The guests clinked glasses, but it wasn't the sound that stayed. It was the silence after, that moment when every heart in the room acknowledged something real happened here. Later, after guests had gone and the triplets were tucked in with lullabies and promises, Roger and Kersey stood alone on the balcony. He pulled her into his chest, one hand against the nape of her neck, the other around her waist. "You know," he whispered, "the man you met, he would have ruined this. He almost did." Kersey looked up, her thumb brushing the curve of his jaw. But the man I loved, the one who showed up when it mattered, he built this. The city lights flickered below them like stars trying to be seen. Roger kissed her. Not like their first kiss. Not like the desperate ones from years ago. This kiss was settled, sacred, sealed. It wasn't for lust. It wasn't even for love. It was for everything they had survived to feel this peace. The world might remember Roger Wayne as a billionaire, a strategist, a tycoon, but on this balcony, he was something more eternal, a man redeemed by love, a father anchored by purpose, a husband who finally understood that the greatest empires are built in hearts, not headlines. And as Kersey whispered one last time, "You're not the man I met." He smiled. "No, I'm the man you made me want to become." And with the last kiss of the night, they didn't just end a chapter. They wrote a legacy. The story has been told. But what lingers isn't just Roger Wayne's redemption or Kersey's quiet strength. What lingers is what this tale unlocked in you. You who stayed to the very end. You who saw a man break and rebuild. You who believed love could not only survive, but transform. This wasn't just a romance. It was a witness to what happens when two people refuse to let pain win. When they rewrite history with intention. When they choose each other every single day. There was a time I didn't believe I could be more, that my past had fixed my future in stone, that love was a weakness, that softness was a threat. But then she walked in, and somehow she didn't ask me to change, she made me want to. So if you're watching this, if you're lost, guarded, tired, or scared, just know the right love, at the right time, can turn a storm into a home. I wish I could hold the girl I used to be and whisper, "Don't shrink, don't chase, don't settle." One day, your strength will be the blueprint someone builds their life on. And when that day comes, you'll understand why all the waiting, all the heartbreak, all the healing was worth it. Maybe you saw yourself in Roger, the guarded one, the overthinker, the person who didn't know how to ask for softness. Or maybe you're Kersey, the woman who poured light even when the world expected her to dim. The lover who chose herself and still believed in second chances. Or maybe you're both. Whoever you are, wherever you are, this story isn't just theirs. It's ours. A reminder that love doesn't demand perfection. Growth doesn't happen overnight. Healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means forgiving. And the right person doesn't rescue you. They rise with you. Then, like this story, if you believe change is possible. Share this story if you believe healing is powerful. Subscribe to Love and Twilights, because here, every story is more than a tale. It's a testament. Visualize. The triplets dancing in a sunlit room, their laughter echoing like music. Kersey painting swatches on her studio wall, Roger walking hand in hand with his daughter, letting her lead. A letter tucked away, waiting to be opened at 18. A school named after love. A balcony kiss that says we made it. Without a word. These are not just endings. They're legacies. You've just finished a smooth and refined story. Not of fairy tales, but of transformation. And if there's one thing Love and Twilight's hopes you take with you, it's this. The right love won't always come when you expect it. But when it does, it won't just change your life. It will help you become the version of yourself you always dreamed you could be. So stay hopeful. Stay soft. Stay brave. Because your story? It's still being written. Like this video to show the world that transformation is real. Share it with someone who needs hope. Subscribe to Love and Twilights, your sanctuary for redemptive, emotionally rich, unforgettable stories. We don't just tell stories. We remind you who you are. Love and Twilights.